everyone, and welcome back to the Knit Front and Back podcast. My name is George, and this is a podcast all about the things I have been knitting recently. So I hope you are doing well. I hope the weather is getting nice and warm where you are, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere. Like here in Berlin, it's just starting to get sunny again, as you can see, which is very nice. So settle down, have yourself a nice cup of tea, and let's do some talking about knitting. I'm going to start off with the things I've finished recently. My finished objects, quite a few of those, and then talk a little bit about some works in progress, and then a few little bits and bobs of new yarn that I've acquired recently. So to start off, I will begin with what I'm wearing, which is my recently finished Saven. This is a delightful cabled sweater pattern by Megan Babin of Hudson and West. This was, for me, quite an ambitious project because I didn't know much about making a jumper in pieces and seaming. I'd mostly done raglans before. I also didn't really know much about doing cables. So this was a lot of learning, but I am thoroughly happy with how this has come out. Last time I showed this jumper to you, it was in pieces and I was waiting to do the seaming. Turned out seaming was really not that difficult. The nice thing about this design is it has this slip stitch sort of feature all along the seams. So when you look at the different pieces, it's very obvious where the seam needs to be, and it was actually really pretty simple to seam it up. So that was good. Overall, I would say I had a great time with this pattern. I think it's in 10 different sizes, so there's a huge range. And something else that I liked about it is that it's a sort of gender neutral pattern, in that there are options for making it with waist shaping or without, and making it with longer sleeves and body or shorter. And something I liked about the way that it was written. In traditional patterns, you'll see like here is a men's version and here is a women's version. Whereas this pattern, it just said, here is the option for waist shaping if you want that. Like here are the options for longer sleeves if you want that. And I quite like that sort of gender neutral approach. For me, I did the version without waist shaping because I have fairly wide hips, but I did the longer sleeves because, as you can see, I love a really long sleeve. I find it nice and cozy to have sort of cuffs around your fingers like this. And so yeah, as I say, this pattern was fairly challenging for me because I don't, as I say, know a lot about cables. But it has some nice features. Like it's got a tubular cast on all around, and the way the pattern works is you start off doing the sleeves before you do the front and back. And the nice thing is the cables here running up the sleeves are the same cables running down the side of the front and back panel. And then this section here in the middle is what you swatch for making sure you have the right gauge. So the good thing is by the time it comes to actually doing the complicated panels, you have already done the side cables on the sleeves and you've already done the center thing as your swatch. So it's not as intimidating as it might be otherwise. I used a 4mm needle for this, and I did have a little cable needle to help me with the cabling, which I think I would recommend unless you're feeling very brave and you can go ahead and do all this cabling without a cable needle. Another nice thing which you might be able to see is that it has little wrapped stitches. So at these points here in this central triangle, you take the yarn and you sort of wrap it round a few stitches a few times, and it gives I think a really nice effect. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed this pattern a lot. And the only sort of, I suppose, small issue I had with it was the neckband is on me. It sits a little bit funny, and to be fair, it's one of those neckbands where you knit it twice as long and then seam it inside. And I haven't done neckbands before, so I might have just not done a very good job of picking up my stitches. But the shaping is a little bit strange. I think it's fine when you're wearing it. When I'm not wearing it, you can see the neckband sits just at a slightly odd angle, but it's fine when you're wearing it. Though I did see that Megan has recently released an update for this pattern with a different method of making the neckband. So I don't dislike the neckband enough that I'm going to unpick it and reknit it, though if you choose to do this pattern now, it now has a different neckband, which I assume might be a slightly better fit for some people. But yeah, like I say, overall, I think this pattern was lovely. It was clearly written. I like that it came in a range of sizes. I like that it had a lot of gender options. I understood all the instructions, even though I'm not very experienced with it. And overall, I am just delighted with the finished object. I think I knit it pretty much completely to pattern. The only thing I changed was I added little thumb holes. I know some people hate thumb holes, but for me, it's really nice and cozy. And like I say, I did the sleeves extra long. So all I did was when I was seaming up, I just left a few inches unseamed. Now I have a little cozy thumb hole. And the yarn I used for this was nice as well. It's one by a German company I hadn't heard of before called Seehor and Siebert, and this is their Natur wool garn. So show you the label, and this is a 100% non-superwash wool, worsted weight. So I was really happy with this yarn. Actually, like I say, I hadn't heard of the company before. They're pretty small, and they do natural shades. So they dye in, I think there's a light brown, a medium brown and a dark brown, and a light grey, a medium grey and a dark grey, and an undyed. And this is the light brown colour. And I was delighted. I picked this yarn, to be honest, partly because it was affordable. I thought I was going to need maybe 9 or 10 skeins for this jumper. In the end, I actually only used 6, but because it was so many, I wanted something affordable. And a lot of the yarns I was looking at were 10, 15 quid for a skein, and this was only, I think, 6 or 7 euros for a skein, so it was really affordable. And also, it's just lovely. It was lovely to work with. It's not super soft, but it's not rough. I would happily have this next to my skin and it would be fine. But it feels really sort of robust. Like, I've been wearing this jumper for weeks and it's not pilling at all. It's really warm. And like I say, the yarn was just a pleasure to work with. So I would definitely, if I was making a jumper in future in a sort of natural shade, definitely consider using this yarn again. Generally speaking, I also found it to be quite a useful lesson in choosing yarns, because I think a lot of the knitting content that at least I see online is, for a start, a lot of it is from America, and so the yarns people use, they might be difficult to get here, or they can be really expensive, and sometimes you feel like you have to have the right yarn to do a project. But using this made me think, actually, using a local yarn, something that's made nearer wherever you live, is A, a lot cheaper, and B, a fun way to find new and different yarns, and C, can give you a really great outcome. So I was very happy about that. And like I say, I finished this jumper a few weeks ago, and I've been wearing it a whole lot since then. It's very cozy, it's very nice, and even though it's kind of, like I say, getting a bit sunnier here, it still quite often stays cold until kind of Easter time here, so it's nice to have a nice cozy sweater to wear. So yeah, that's my first finished object, the Saven by Megan Babish. Do recommend the pattern, had a lot of fun. And the second object I have to show you that's finished is a quick hat I made. I took a trip recently to Seville in Spain. If you've never been, Seville is beautiful. It's an absolutely gorgeous place. And there were a few yarn shops there, which I visited, and I got some local yarn from one of them. Hang on one second, I'm just going to close my door because it's Sunday afternoon in Berlin, and that means someone is playing techno music. This is life living in a city, so I'm just going to shut the door to make it a bit quieter. I'll be right back. Okay, so like I say, while I was in Seville, whenever I visit a new place, I do like to see if there are any local yarn stores nearby, pop in, pick up some yarn. And I like to see if there's anything kind of locally dyed. And where I was staying in Seville, in the Triana area, which is by the river, and is this beautiful area with a lot of ceramic shops, and it's quite a sort of trendy place with lots of bars and restaurants and stuff. It's really nice, and they had right round the corner from our Airbnb, in fact, a really cute little local yarn store. And they mostly sold a lot of cotton, and because it's warm in Seville almost all the time, and a lot of people do crochet there, it seems, rather than knitting. But they did have some wool as well, and this was a locally dyed 100% merino fingering weight yarn that was just beautiful in all these like shades of blue, which is absolutely my favourite colour. And this was called, let me see, it's actually, and these are two different brands who seem to be collaborating. One of them is Casa Sol, the other is, I'm going to say this wrong, but Dingo Londangos Lanas. And in fact, this didn't even have a colourway name. It seemed to be like a pretty small set of dye batches, and a lot of them were named after places in Seville, so I assume it was a Seville-based dye. But I had this one skein of lovely 100% merino, and I was a bit unsure what to do with it, and I decided to be decisive and make a hat. This is just a very simple 1x1 ribbed beanie that I find comfy and slouchy. This was made holding the yarn double, and did this one on, I think, 3.5mm needles. Just a, typical 1x1 ribbed hat. And the reason I actually chose to make this is I have a habit, I think a lot of us do, which is that you get a nice skein of yarn and you think, I'll keep that for something special. And then it sits on your shelf for months, years, and you never end up using it because you're looking for the perfect special project. And I know some people love sort of collecting yarn, and fair enough, I can see the appeal. But for me, a lot of the pleasure comes from using the yarn, having a nice thing once you're done. So I decided that I would rather make just a really simple hat, quick and impulsive, over a few days, and make use of this nice yarn I had. And yeah, it was lovely. It was a very nice experience to knit with, and now I have this jolly hat. So I think I'm trying to be a bit more kind of proactive about, if you get some more yarn in, then just using it and not overthinking exactly what should I keep this, should I save it for some rainy day or some special occasion, but rather just being like, yeah, no, I'll make a nice hat, spend a few days making a nice hat, and then have a nice hat. So yeah, this is very soft and very squishy and very nice. I was a bit concerned before I blocked it that it was a bit stiff, but then I blocked it and I wore it, and now it's like super floppy, so it's totally fine. And yeah, this is just a casual comfy beanie, as I often tend to wear. This is quite my sort of casual style. So yeah, happy with that, and Gonna get some wear out of that nice hat as well. So of course the other thing I have to show you is socks. If you've watched any of my previous episodes, well then firstly thank you for coming back, and secondly you'll know I love socks. And my favourite thing to do when I go somewhere new is, as I say, I'll pop into a local yarn shop and just pick up whatever sock yarn they have, just a skein of sock yarn, and knit socks while I'm in whatever place I'm visiting. And then when you come home you have a sort of souvenir pair of socks, which I find delightful. So obviously while I was in Seville I had to pick up some sock yarn. In fact, I got this from the same place I got that yarn for the hat to make these. Aren't they jolly? These are Seville socks. They're just plain vanilla socks. They're in this cute shades of blue colourway. And this was a yarn, once again, I have never heard of, called, they're just called Rosa's Crafts Vintage Socks. And this seems to be, as far as I can tell, a commercial Spanish brand from Barcelona, I believe. And it's just 75% wool, 25% polyamide, standard fingering weight sock yarn. And I did these in my usual vanilla sock way, which is toe up, on 2mm needles, which are a US size 0. I knit quite loosely, so I like really small sock needles. These are 60 stitches around, and this is a true afterthought heel, which is my favourite heel of lately. You just knit a tube, don't even think about the heel until you come in right at the end, pick up stitches above and below where you want the heel to go, cut into your knitting, which can be a little alarming, but you get used to it, and then add in the heel. And one of the things I like about this heel so much is, let me see if this is a good example, is that you get really no holes at all. You end up with a really neat heel, and I find actually an even better result than using waste yarn. You know, previously when I've done afterthought heels, I've done, they're called forethought or peasant heels, you know, where you put in waste yarn. I think you don't even need it. I think you actually, like I say, get a better result with this true afterthought heel. So yeah, these were very satisfying to knit. I knit these as I was wandering around Seville, and I'm really happy with them. I also, they are, as we say, sisters, not twins. I don't worry about matching yarn entirely, but I quite like, for example, the fact that this one is dark at the bottom and at the top, and that this one is light at the top and bottom. I find that quite fun. So yeah, there's just a simple pair of vanilla socks, but they remind me of my holiday. So yeah, I've got fluff in my hair. So yes, this is pair of socks number 1. I also have, I finished a pair that I was showing you as a work in progress last time, which is these guys, which are sort of mismatched because they are from leftovers. These are both from leftovers of the West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply, which is a great kind of go-to basic sock yarn. This colour here is pink flamingo, and this colour here is seascape. And yeah, I just had about 30 grams of each colour left over from other socks. Couldn't decide what to do with them, so I thought I would do a kind of mix and match pair with contrasting heels, toes and cuffs in the opposite colours. These are once again an afterthought heel because of the self-striping yarn. I did these toe up as well, as is my way, and that meant I could use the entirety of the leftovers, which I find very pleasing. Yeah, This is like last time I was saying I can't decide how I feel about this look of the sort of mismatched pair, because also pink and green is not necessarily a colour combination I would have chosen. But I think they may be quite fun. I think yeah, why not? I did quite enjoy making this slightly odd mismatched pair, and it was a good way to use up all of that leftover yarn. So there we go, that's pair number 2. And I have, believe it or not, yet another pair of socks to show you as well. Right, so my last pair is more yarn that I bought in Seville, in fact. I was supposed to be in Seville for a week, but I liked it so much I decided to stay a bit longer, and I was there for sort of nearly 2 weeks in the end. And so I decided to go to another yarn shop while I was there and pick up more sock yarn. And I ended up picking up this stuff, which is was interesting to me. I haven't used anything like this before. It is the Katja Setter Tweed 2. And Katja is one of these brands that you find quite commonly in Europe. Well, I don't see it so much here in Germany, but I've seen it in Spain and Portugal. I think you get it in Italy and Poland and places as well. And this is quite an interesting composition. It is, let me check for you. Where is the composition? Here we go. It is mostly, it's 55% wool, 23% polyamide, 20% silk, and 2% elastane. Which is slightly odd. I think you can feel there's some silk in there. It does feel nice. And I assume, I'm not sure, but the elastane might be these little tweed flecks. It's mostly dark red, but it's got these flecks of yellow and orange and pink in there. I ended up with this, actually, I was in this other yarn shop, and I speak no Spanish. I can like order a beer and some patatas bravas, and that's about it. But generally it was fine. Like, I learned how to ask for sock yarn and stuff, and I all went fine. But for some reason in this second yarn shop, I just got very panicked and overwhelmed. I think it was because it was one of those shops where everything was behind the counter and you had to ask to see anything, and I just kind of brain froze and panicked. So I was trying to talk to the woman in the shop, and I was trying to point to the yarn I wanted, and I had been intending to buy some sort of blue wool sock yarn, and I ended up with red silk sock yarn. But actually, that turned out to be quite fun, because it's nice to have a bit of variation. And this stuff was, yeah, it feels nice. I'm not mad about that, but yeah, that's what happens when you try and buy yarn in a country where you don't speak the language. But using this, I have knit some socks for my mum. And these are not yet blocked, and I have not woven in the ends, as you can see. But these are this pattern called Vanilla is the New Black, which I've talked about before on this channel, which is my personal favourite vanilla sock pattern for fit, because you get like a lot of space here around the ankle, and I find the fit on these, for me, to be excellent. And I've made socks for my mum before with heel, flap and gusset, and I thought I would also try these for her and see if she likes the fit. So yeah, these look a little floppy and sad because they haven't been blocked yet. But here we go. These were also done toe up, as is my preferred method. One thing I noticed about this yarn, it's quite thick. It's quite substantial. I mean, it's fingering weight, but it's fairly chunky. And so these are only 60 stitches on 2mm needles. Normally I would do 64 stitches for my mum because her feet are a little wider around than mine. But because this yarn was kind of plumper, it ended up 60 stitches was quite big enough for the width I needed. But yeah, I think I'll maybe try and block these before I show them to you. But yes, this is a nice, simple, cozy pair, and the silk in here feels nice, and I quite like the tweedy effect. So yeah, that's a pair of socks number 3, going to my mum. That is all of my finished objects. So now I think I will move on to works in progress, because I have been busily knitting away on quite a lot recently. And the first thing I have to show you is my No Frills, the pattern by Petite Knit. This lovely sweater pattern, plain top-down raglan. Done one of these before and really liked it. It's a sort of simple, mindless knit. So here is my No Frills, and it is, as you can see, nearly finished. Got both of the sleeves done, and I'm just doing the last bit of ribbing around the body. I left this for last because I like a twisted rib. I really like the way twisted rib looks, but it's a little bit of a faff to do it. It takes a while. So that is my last bit I've got to do, but this is very nearly finished. And like, this is such a quick knit. You can do one of these in 2 weeks, which I find for me is very speedy for a jumper. And so this was knit on 3.25mm needles. And that was what I was getting gauge on, so reasonably quick. And this is the size medium. It's the same as I knit for my last version of this. The only difference is the last one I made quite cropped, and this one is a little longer, as you can see. And I've also done some extra long sleeves because I do like a long sleeve. And that's the twisted rib again. You can see there, I just think that's a nice look. And so the yarn I'm using on this is different as well. Last time I was using a woolly knit merino cone, held double, but this time I'm using the woolly knit British wool cone, held along with some mohair. So this is the British wool cone in the colour, I think it's called light grey. Let me check. Yeah, it's just called light grey. It's a very nice sort of stormy, slightly warm grey. And this is with 250 grams already wound off, so you get 500 grams in a cone, which is loads. It was really affordable. I think it was like 20 quid or something for the cone. Bargain. So I'm using this, and I'm holding it along with some mohair in this kind of steel grey colour. And this is the Drops Kid Silk. So this is 100% wool, and this is a 70-30? 75% mohair, 25% silk. The drops I picked because it was a really affordable mohair. I think most mohair I've seen is sort of €10 for a, what is this? Is this a skein? A ball? I'll call it a ball. So €10 for a ball, and this stuff I think was like €4 a ball. It was really affordable. So I've got 6 of these, though I think actually I'll only need 5. And half a cone, and I'm holding these together to end up with this, I think quite nice, sort of slightly mild looking grey, which is very much my colour palette. And I am really liking the way this jumper looks and the sizing of it. The only thing is the mohair, you couldn't call it itchy, it's definitely soft, but it's not like super soft. I'm hoping that once it's blocked, it'll soften up a bit, because I've used mohair before for accessories, but I've never knit a whole jumper using mohair, so I'm not entirely sure what to expect from that in terms of the feel. But I've looked at various types of mohair that you could get, and I was wondering if I should buy a more expensive one. But I've seen a lot of other knitters say that actually the Drops Kid Silk is just as good as the other more expensive ones, and like I say, it's like less than half the price, so that's what I've gone with. And yeah, so very nearly finished this No Frills by Petite Knit. Will be happy to add that to my wardrobe as a nice, simple staple piece. Right, a little bit more tea before we continue. Marvellous, yes. The next thing I have is in this cute bag. This is, I also picked this up in Seville actually, from the Real Alcazar, which is like this beautiful Moorish palace with amazing gardens. It's a really lovely place to go, and everywhere there are these ceramic tiles with all these kind of geometric patterns on them, which are lovely, and couldn't resist in the gift shop a little knitting bag with the patterns on. And this is fortunately lined with a sort of waterproof fabric, which turned out to be very helpful because this was in my bag and I immediately spilt beer all over it. But my knitting inside was fine, so the waterproof fabric did its job. And the bag seems none the worse for its encounter with the local beer. That's good. But what I have in here is more socks from another trip. In fact, I just got back on Friday. It's Sunday now, but late on Friday night I got back from a quick trip to Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And Rotterdam's a really fun place, actually. I've like Amsterdam is better known, and I've travelled to Amsterdam a few times in the past, but this time I decided to go to Rotterdam, which is very like industrial, which I think is quite charming, and ate some nice food and sort of saw some interesting sights, and also, as I say, did some knitting. There weren't a lot of yarn shops in Rotterdam, but there was a big fabric store near where I was, and downstairs in the fabric store they had quite a lot of yarn. Not a massive array of sock yarn, but they did have quite a few of this fun self-striping from a brand called, okay, I'm going to pronounce this wrong again, but let me get out the tags. Sheepjes? Yeah, my Dutch is, if you can believe it, even worse than my Spanish. But this is called Sheepjes Downtown, and this is a sort of Dutch brand. They do a whole bunch of self-striping sock yarns, and I loved this colour. This colour combination I thought was really fun and jolly, and it is called After Dark, I believe. Yes, After Dark, and it's 25% merino, 75% merino, 25% nylon, and it is so soft. It feels lovely. It was a little bit of a pain to knit with. I mean, only a little bit, but it was quite loosely plied, so it was very easy to split the stitches. So I had to kind of keep an eye on that, but it knit up to this beautifully soft fabric. And then for the toes, and I'm also going to add heels and cuffs in that. This is more sheepjes, however we're calling that. This is their Metropolis line, which is more 75% merino, 25% nylon, but instead of the striping of the downtown, the Metropolis is just in plain colours. So this is rather a sort of handsome emerald green colour, which is called Karachi. And as you may have noticed, this is a slightly unusual configuration, in that this is going to be an afterthought everything sock. So if you haven't seen this before, I thought this was quite fun. I was going to do my normal cast on, do a contrast toe, and then knit halfway, and then stop and cast on a second, but I decided instead I would do this afterthought everything method. And the reason, partly that was because I didn't want to, I was halfway through my sock and I was out and about in the city, busy wandering around, and I didn't want to stop and measure and cast one off and then get out my other needles I used and cast on more and keep measuring. I mean, I had the stuff to do that with me if I had to, but it would have been a bit of a faff. So I thought, I got halfway through and I thought I'll just keep going, just keep knitting. And the other thing was that this downtown self-striping yarn came in 50-gram balls, which is kind of unusual. And most of the sock yarn I buy at least comes in 100 grams, so you use as much as you need for one sock, and then you just do the other one. Whereas I found that 50 grams is, I know, enough for me for a pair of socks if I add 20 grams of another yarn for contrast heels, toes and cuffs. But I didn't have a scale with me, so I couldn't weigh out that 50-gram ball into half and half. And I could have, I suppose, estimated when I'd used about half of it and stopped. But I thought it would be more efficient to knit the entire tube. So the way I did this is, like I say, cast on using Judy's Magic Cast On, which is my standard toe up way. Cast it on, do a standard toe, and then I switched from Magic Loop to a 9-inch circular, which is my preferred way for, especially when I'm wandering around a city. And then I just kept knitting all the way up, and I got to, I guess, about here while I was in Rotterdam, and then I was on the train home, and there were a bunch of delays on the train, which was annoying, but it meant I did manage to finish the rest of this. So I kept knitting, and then once I had entirely used up all of this self-striping yarn and run out, I switched back to the contrasting yarn, and I switched over to my Magic Loop needles, and then I did a toe as you would if you were going cuff down, and you do toe decreases and finish with Kitchener stitching it closed. So then you end up with a sock tube enclosed at both ends. If you look heavily, you can see the sock ends are very slightly different, because my Judy's Magic Cast On is a little bit tight and my Kitchener stitch is a little bit loose. So and also these are decreases and these are increases. No, other way around. These are the increases and these are the decreases. So if you look super close, you can see that they're not exactly the same. That doesn't overly bother me, and I think by the time they're blocked, you will be barely able to see, but if that bothers you, that is something to know. And so what I'm going to do next, now I've got this big tube, is find the halfway point, pick up stitches all the way around using 2 needles. So pick up stitches below the halfway point, pick up stitches on one needle, pick up stitches above the halfway point on the other needle, cut in, separate the two, and then add cuffs to each, and then add heels to each. I think this will be really fun. This is a method I haven't tried before, but like I say, I've been really happy with the true afterthought heels that I've made before, so I thought an afterthought everything would be quite fun. I also just think it's kind of funny and silly to have this massive sock tube. So that is going to be, there you go. That is going to be my pair of Rotterdam socks, so I'm excited for those. I'll keep you updated on how the afterthought everything goes. The only other thing, I do have a few other bits and pieces I'm working on as well, as usual, but I will give you just one last quick update, because I haven't shown you this for a while, which is another sweater I'm working on in a cute bag, but I made this myself and I'm terrible at sewing, so we're gonna not look at this very closely. this is my Woolen Honey by Andrea Mowry, and this has been sort of sitting in storage for several months because I had knit the yoke and then I blocked it and I wasn't quite sure what to do because the yoke is supposed to be quite long on this by the time you're finished, but for me it was really short. And I discovered the issue was to do with my row gauge. Like this is as you can see, it's garter stitch in the round and it's on a fingering weight yarn, and so to get the stitch gauge I have to use tiny little needles. These are 2.25mm or US size 1s, which is way smaller than what's recommended on the pattern. And so the problem I had was that my stitch gauge was right, but my row gauge was way off. It was really, really short. So what I ended up doing is I finished the yoke, and then I kept knitting, and I did an extra 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches of plain garter stitch before I split for the sleeves. And like honestly, I could even have done more before splitting for the sleeves, but I had to keep going. So I was really sort of losing momentum on this thing. So I kept going, and now I've split the sleeves and I'm just working on the body. Like I said, this is for me a very slow process because it's garter stitch in the round, it's tiny needles, but I absolutely love this honeycomb effect at the top. I think it's really cool. I really like the way this yarn is looking. It's the Malabrigo sock, which is a yarn I absolutely love. I blocked the top when I was trying it on, and the block bit feels absolutely lovely. And it's in the colour Frank Ochre, which I think is really lovely. Really like this mustard colour. And there is a Andrea Mowry knit along going on at the moment on Ravelry, and that's been good motivation for me. Like a lot of people being very enthusiastic and helpful, and a lot of other people doing woolen honeys, which is nice. So after not touching this for several months, I'm now making progress. I think I will keep this quite cropped, if only because I don't know how much longer I can keep going on it. But I'm going to finish off the body and then the sleeves, and then hopefully one day perhaps in the future I will be able to actually wear this. But yeah, I'm glad I am back on this, and glad I was able to make the sort of fit work. I think I'm sort of trying to try it on as I go. The fit might be a little bit funky, I'm not sure, but the good thing about garter stitch is it's nice and stretchy, so if it comes out a bit small in some places, I think it'll stretch okay. But yeah, I think it looks lovely. It's just a lot of work, but that's my woolen honey. So those are my whips. That's what I'm working on at the moment. And just before I go, I will show you some yarn I bought recently. So when I finished this 7, in fact, like I say, I bought 10 skeins of the yarn, thinking I would need loads, but I actually only needed 6. And so the yarn shop I bought it from very nicely let me return it to swap it for some other yarn. And so what I picked up from them was this beauty. This is more sock yarn, as I always do. The Delphine by Atelier Francisco Ull in just my shades. This sort of blue and grey is my colour. I don't have specific plans for this yet, but I imagine that will just become more socks. This is a, what is it, 75, 25? Yeah, 75% wool, 25% polyamide. Make some nice socks out of that. The other thing I picked up, you know when you walk into a yarn store and there's something and you touch it and you just keep squeezing it? I was chatting to people in the yarn shop while holding this yarn and just squishing it in my hands for like 20 minutes. After that I was like, okay, well I guess I really have to buy it now. So this is the Lang Yarns alpaca socks 6-ply. So it is 70% alpaca, 30% polyamide, and it's a sport weight. I don't really know what it's 100. What am I going to do with 150 grams of sport weight alpaca yarn? No idea, but do like squeezing it. So if nothing else, it can become socks. But I may possibly even get some more of it and make another jumper. It feels so nice. I had to have it. And then lastly, I was doing some online ordering for some books I wanted, and I thought while there I would grab a little bit of yarn as well. This is from a small German dyer called Yarn Stories. And this is a nice little pair I think I picked up of sock yarn. This is 75% merino, 25% nylon, fingering weight sock yarn. And this one is sort of beige with all these lovely speckles in browns and oranges and small amounts of this kind of teal green, which I love. And this I thought would match quite well with that. So I'm thinking this as a pair of vanilla socks with heels, toes and cuffs in this colour would be really lovely. So yeah, more socks potentially in the future. So that was everything, and my phone is beeping at me to tell me I'm running out of storage, so I will wrap it up here. But I hope you are doing well wherever you are. I hope your knitting is going well. I wish you all the best for a good week, and I will be back soon with some more knitting for you. Alright, cheers then. Bye.